I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
I'm not even supposed to be here today! Oh, fuck you!
Come on, you want me to drive? You're supposed to be suicidal. Remember, I'll
Anybody
drive.
a drive?
Get in the car.
Fuck me in the ass. Fuck you, you fucking stupid cunt.
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I'm here with a brand new movie review. And this movie review is going to be for the 2024 horror remake, the very last film to be released in 2024, NOSFERATU. Robert Eggers' newest film, which is his most recent film. Yeah, and this was the last movie I saw of 2024 because I saw this New Year's Eve. But what's the plot of NOSFERATU? Well, you're all familiar with the story of NOSFERATU. Wisborg, Germany, 1838. Styled by a superior authority in task of stealing a land deal, newly led SA agent Thomas Hutter reluctantly abandons his warrior wife Ellen in hopes of securing his position in the firm. However, the mesmerizing sight of lustrous gold is a deadly trap, and the ambitious young realtor arrives in the mysterious Count Orlok's isolated castle in the Alps. The ghastly embodiment of pure horror begins to haunt Ellen's unspoken nocturnal imaginings. With the lights accumulating to darkness, who can erase the suffocating stranglehold of ancient evil? After all, few have gazed into the abyss and lived to tell the tale. And what can one willing sacrifice rid Wisborg of the NOSFERATU plague? So, as for my reaction, I am definitely familiar with the NOSFERATU story and the other two adaptations and the whole NOSFERATU character. My introduction note to the character was through this one SpongeBob episode called Graveyard Shift, where in that episode, Mr. Krabs forces Squidward and SpongeBob to do a night shift. And during the shift, Squidward one time pranks SpongeBob with the story of a killer, and then by the end of the episode, the guy that looks like the killer that Squidward was talking about shows up at the Krusty Krab, and then it turns out he is actually a person that's actually there to randomly drop off an application. And then you see NOSFERATU playing with the lights as the three pretty much laugh at him for doing that. Ironically, that too is literally Robert Eggers' intro to the character as well. And when it comes to Robert Eggers, I actually like Robert Eggers as a director. He has done films I have loved like The Witch, The Lighthouse, The Northman, so I definitely had to check this out. So, I saw this movie in theaters on New Year's Eve, and I loved it. Now I've finished rewatching it now, and I still love it. But I would also call this his weakest film in a way, despite still being nearly just as great as his previous three works. So, how did this movie get made? Well, development began in 2015 when Eggers had planned to make it originally at the time to make it a second film. He described it as a passion project, but opted to delay its production because he went on to do The Lighthouse after The Witch. Bill Skarsgård, oh yeah, that guy, and Lily Rose Depp were in cast and lead roles in September 2022. Filming then took place in Barrandov Studios in Prague between February and May 2023. So, after NOSFERATU was shot and marketed, it had its world premiere in Berlin on December 2nd, 2024, and was, ironically, theatrically the first horror film in a while to be released into theaters to the public by Focus Features and by Universal internationally on December 25th, Christmas Day. The film, when it released, it got positive reviews from critics, and made over $180 million worldwide on a $50 million budget, and became Eggers' highest grossing film. And at the Oscars, it got nominated for Best Cinematography, Costume Design, Production Design, and Best Makeup and Hairstyling. So, It's pretty ironic how a horror film released on Christmas Day made over nearly 200 million. Right there. So, Nosferatu is definitely one of the most notorious versions of the Dracula story. With this movie, it really feels like Eggers was going for the ultimate Dracula vibe here. There's definitely references to other versions of Nosferatu and other Dracula adaptations in general, and actually even kind of feels like a Stanley Kubrick movie at times. And the two most important things in the film, the vampire and the victim, were perfectly realized well. Especially, like, it's definitely repulsing to and surprising to see a rotting corpse that Orlok was pretty much kind of like Impaler Vlad in a way. And the breathing and voice are definitely very creepy as well. Like, I'm usually not the biggest Bill Skarsgård fan, but I think when it comes to the performances he's done, I feel like this is actually probably, this and Boy Kills World are his best performances. Anyway, honestly, I think this portrayal of him is better than his portrayal as Pennywise. Lily Rose Depp, aka Johnny Depp's daughter, actually gives a great performance here as Ellen, who started off with a crap performance in Tusk, actually gives a really great performance in this film. Ella, on the other hand, is haunted and bloodless from the start, but full of fragile beauty. And also, she's even terrifyingly unhinged as she jerks her pale body around in many scenes. And of course, when it comes to the whole production values of the movie, Nosferatu's sets are designed so well with all the realism, and really sponges like you're reading a classic horror tale. The art direction is impeccable, and the interiors of the houses and the landscapes really create this believable and terrifying world. Right here. And honestly, Skarsgård's version of the character really does embody the figure of the vampire as a force of nature. And his soundtrack, which was done by a guy named Olafur Ahmed, it really does well in accompanying the visuals, intensifying the tension and suspense, and every note, every chord really resonates with the viewer, and it creates a completely sensory experience. Like, Nosferatu is a film that definitely stays with the viewer after they've watched it. Like, this was definitely one of the best theater experiences of 2024. So, how does the film start off? Well, we start off in the early 1800s, and a young girl named Ellen pleads for a supernatural being to ease her loneliness. So, her cries awaken this mysterious creature and the mysterious creature has her pledge herself to him eternally for life, and then seduces her before he forces himself onto her, and then so that's where you get the main title of the movie. Then you cut to about 38 years later, 1838. She's now married to Thomas Hutter, and they're living in the German town of Wisberg. So Thomas has to go on this commission from his employer, Herr Nock, to sell his decrepit manor to the reclusive Count Orlok. Ellen is, though, disturbed by a pleasurable dream of married death. She begs Thomas to stay, but it doesn't work, and so Thomas leaves her in the care of Friedrich Harding, his friend, and his wife Anna, and their two younger daughters, Claire and Louise. So, you know where the story is about to go from here. The film is beautifully shot. Like, everyone is definitely does well with the acting here, and the atmosphere is terrific. The realism is terrific, but also really does work is the design of the town itself. The design of the town is definitely terrific to look at. It actually feels like you're really actually looking at this whole town. Okay, what am I saying? It really does feel like you're actually in this whole entire town. As the viewer, you're experiencing life was like in the 1830s, or the 1800s in general. The other great performance that also really shines out is Willem Dafoe, who really chews up the scenery in the very most appropriate manner. I say him and Lily Rose Depp are the best performances of the film, and Lily Rose Depp gives a convincing performance as pretty much the child bride whose soul is like possessed by this mysterious dark demon, in a way. This version of Dracula. And of course, when you see like Nicholas Hoult and Lily Rose Depp interacting together, like, they actually do have some great chemistry with one another, and you do get some gut-wrenching tension between the two as their souls get consumed by this version of Dracula, and a lot of genuine fear gets set in as the characters really lose their grip on reality. And Friedrich Harding is kind of obvious of a payoff. Like, Aaron Taylor Johnson actually also does allocate the right amount of blinded skepticism through stoic and rough stubbornness. And also Emma Corrin does portray pretty much the most sympathetic character in the movie in Friedrich's wife. Any scene where she's by her children is honestly definitely a pretty worrying scene, and definitely definitely kind of a sad moment because you kind of know something bad's going to happen to these two kids. Like, if you've watched The Witch, even children aren't safe from his horror films. Right here. And now more in Defoe. Like, Defoe plays the role of Professor Albert Eberhardt, Albert von Franz, and he brings the role to life with such devotion, and it's acknowledged beyond the realm of organic science, and one really couldn't deny how much of a talented director Robert Eggers has become by this point, like his fourth feature, and instilling devoted trust in the cast for this kind of movie. Like, the film is brilliantly crafted and acted, and it's very haunting, like Robert Eggers' remake of Nosferatu, and this is not the first remake of the film. Yeah, which was a 1922 style film. There was another version by Werner Herzog, and this is the second attempt. So, Robert Eggers' version is a spellbinding horror that really does pay its deepest respect towards the original silent movie that pretty much introduced the world to this character, and offers this beautiful look in the title or character. So, once Thomas sets out to sell that manor, he arrives at the Carpathians in Transylvania, and Thomas then gets surrounded by the peasants there, and is then shunned by the peasants for associating with Orlok. But then he manages to secure a night at the inn, though, by paying twice the rate, and an old woman warns him to not go visit Orlok, though. So, that night, Thomas witnesses this Roma group. They're exhuming and impaling this vampire's corpse, and making the corpse expel blood, and so, the next morning when he wakes up, he finds the village got deserted and the horse is gone. So he continues on foot, but then a carriage carries him to Orlok's castle. So, him and Orlok meet, and so the strange menacing Orlok, he makes Thomas complete the property sale. So then Orlok demonstrates abilities that unsettle Thomas, and so, Thomas accidentally cuts himself during dinner. He pretty much blacks out and awakens to find a bite mark on his chest. So that's when you know something. That's when you know there's something clearly suspicious right here going on. Here, and you know Thomas was definitely not hallucinating his meeting with Orlok. So then, of course, that following night, Orlok meets Thomas again, and he demands Thomas's locket because it contains a lock of Ellen's hair. And guess what? He does not give it back. He coerces Thomas into signing this document that's written in occult writing. And of course, and pretty much it's implied that the contract that Orlok pretty much implies it's for selling. It's the house that Thomas is trying to sell. Thomas now is starting to become really sick and fearful, and he wants to leave, but Orlok does not let him. The man rebuffs all his attempts and orders him to remain and recover before he even tries to go anywhere. So, he finds more bite marks on his chest. And that's when you know he's really stuck with Orlok. Now, and Thomas cannot escape Orlok by this point. Thomas then attempts to escape the castle, but he ends up in another crypt where he finds the Count asleep in the coffin, all decaying and nude, and he tries to attack Orlok with a pickaxe, but Orlok immediately senses this, wakes up, he pursues Thomas, who pretty much turns into these wolves that chase him out, and Thomas escapes Orlok and the wolves by falling to this river beneath the castle, but he does not die because he gets recovered and cared for by Eastern Orthodox nuns at a nearby church, and explained Orlok was a Salmonar, and Orlok had become a vampire, making a pact with the devil himself, and Orlok then sets sail for Wisburg inside his coffin on a ship with plague-carrying rats, and kills the crew during the voyage. Thus now giving the whole entire town a plague. So, from right here, what you get with this Nosferatu remake is unique storytelling. And by unique storytelling, the director Robert Eggers actually does well in crafting a narrative. It's not just a horror tale, but it's a meditation of isolation, obsession, and humanity's darker sides, all explored in this movie. Then you get some atmospheric direction, where the movie excels in creating an eerie gothic atmosphere. And it really feels like, actually point where it feels like you're setting in an actual piece, into an actual historical piece. You're actually stepping into an actual painting. In a very haunting painting. A painting you'd probably find in an art museum. Anyway, a painting of terror and melancholy. Right there. And for fans of slow burn horror, that will definitely catch their attention. Like, the entire thing is not an uplifting film. No, this is an entire movie that is dark, it's slow. It slowly builds up, and like its characters, like some scenes are definitely edited that it's definitely kind of difficult to see if it was like a dream or reality. Like some of the scenes where where Thomas is supposedly having these dreams, one could tell if it's either real or not. Like it's kind of hard to tell if it's either of those. You have the shades of the black dominating the visuals, like with this whole 19th century Germantown, like it really looks like it is technically a movie set, but it actually really almost looks like a real town with the way it's designed. And with the infamous shot that references the original, like the shadow of that is in the original film, that's notorious in the original film. There's a shadow of Orlok's hands that fly when he spreads death to its inhabitants. That's one of the most notorious shots of the original movie. Right here. And the thing with this film is that, yeah, Nosferatu started off as a silent movie. But this is not a silent movie. Right here, like, sorry, just blacking out for a second. Like, and I wouldn't have minded if this was a silent movie too. But we gotta have dialogue stuff now. But that doesn't ruin the movie at all. Like, it would have been still cool if it was silent. Like, yeah, sure, it probably would have been a little bit slower. Like, maybe if it was, since it's a 2-hour movie, some wouldn't like the idea. But the original film was silent, so. But here, like, so yeah. As you all know, nobody's safe when you're in Robert Eggers' horror film. You're not safe from anything. Like, if you've seen stuff like The Witch, nobody is safe. Like, the children are also not safe. And the atmosphere, it definitely really has an unrelenting atmosphere. Right there. Like, it does kind of start to falter a little bit in the final act of the movie, but it doesn't ruin the film either. And of course, well, like, yeah. Alright. So yeah, after the plague has entered the town, Dr. William Sievers is now unable to treat Ellen's frequent sleepwalking and seizures, and so consults with the former mentor named Albin Eberhard von Franz, who's a Swiss scientist that was made fun of for his beliefs, and von Franz then believes that Ellen's now under a spell of this demonic plague-bearing vampire called the NOSFERATU. And of course, Nock gets institutionalized after killing and eating, like, sheep raw, so Sievers and von Franz try to search Nock's office, believing he serves the NOSFERATU, and discover the NOSFERATU is Orlok. So, Thomas goes back to Wisburg as Orlok's plague is ravaging the populace. Nock then escapes, kills this porter, and escorts Orlok to the manor. Orlok appears to Ellen, and he confesses that he is not capable of love, but her pledge really intertwined their destinies, and made his desire to really possess her really like that. And of course, we find out the document that he had tricked Thomas into signing, it was revealed to actually void the Hutters' marriage. And his bond with Ellen cannot be sustained by force. So, Orlok says that she has to willingly submit to him within 3 nights, or else he is going to kill Thomas, and is going to allow the whole plague to straight up wipe out the whole town of Wisburg. So Ellen then, when she meets Thomas again, she confesses her past to Thomas, and after that has troubled sex. Then Orlok, though, retaliates this by killing Anna and her children, and so Friedrich is now driven with madness and grief over the deaths of his wife and 2 daughters, so he dies from the plague and while violating his wife's corpse, so that whole family is wiped out. And of course, like right here, there's like the beat after beat that Eggers really handles with the superb attention to detail when making all the visuals and sound work perfectly for the story, speaking beyond the story, towards the mythological parts of the story. In addition to the whole Count Orlok's attire resembling kind of Vlad the Impaler is a really stroke of genius. Really connects the vampire mythos directly to the historical figure who is known for brutality, in the older European days, and the visual roots for Orlok firmly in the legacy of Dracula preserve the original film spectral masterpiece. And the Eventually, rituals in the film that lead to vampire's demise, like really just right here are also very well done. Like the whole the village dream that Thomas first has when he arrives at that village. It's very well shot and they're remarkable. The film's embrace of body horror really heightened the existential dread that really pervades the story. And the grotesque physicality of Count Orlok really gnarls hands, the limbs, and the frame feels are very organically well designed. As if you're actually looking at a real vampire. Right here. Like every part of his appearance here like really forces the themes of the corruption and decay themes very well. As presence is just very terrific to look at. As sequences involving that transformation really go into visceral horror very well. And what sets NOSFERATU apart is that while it is a remake that does not rely on nostalgia. It definitely pays homage to the source material because, well, yeah, it's still technically a remake, so you kind of have to pay homage to the source material if you're a remake. But it carves out distinct identity through exploration of existential horror, the folklore, and the human frailty. It's definitely as unsettling while also being a beautiful, perfectly balanced horror film. That's something a lot of horror remakes are kind of have a hard time achieving. In a way. So, now we get on to the finale of the movie, where how this movie ends is Von Francis' research suggests that the NOSFERATU plague can be destroyed by a fair man's willing sacrifice, and knowing that this fair man can stop the plague. So, Ellen conspires with Von Francis to keep Thomas away, and Thomas, Von Francis, and Seavers go to Grunwald Manor, where they kill Knock and find him sleeping in Orlok's coffin. So, Thomas realizes Von Francis' betrayal, and so he immediately goes back to save Ellen as Von Francis destroys the vault. Ellen then summons Orlok to her bedroom and repledges herself to him, and allowing him to feed on her till sunrise. So, the sunrise, because he's a vampire, the sunrise kills him. And that's the end of Orlok, aka Dracula. Thomas returns though, he finds Ellen dead, and he holds Ellen's hand as she dies. And Von Francis' narration confirms her sacrifice freed them from the plague of NOSFERATU. So, and that's the end of the movie, right there. That is how this version of NOSFERATU ends. Yeah, so, Ellen got killed by the plague, and no, that's not it. Many people have now died from this plague, and her Harding and the family especially. But Ellen has sacrificed her life to stop the plague, and she ensures that Orlok is killed by the rising sun, and his curse on the town is gone forever. But Thomas is going to forever be devastated by his love's death, so in a way, it does somewhat end better than the guy's first two films, because that's the thing with this guy. He started off at A24, and in comparison to Ari Aster, Robert Eggers actually still makes great films since his debut, unlike Ari Aster, who got worse with each movie he has done so far. Eggers doesn't rely on constant nobody survives endings, and at least here, it's not really a happy ending per se, but the main lead guy is still alive. Not Ellen, not Orlok, Thomas. Thomas, one main character, is at least still alive, and the town is at least safe from the plague. So, at least there's some uplifting things about this ending. May not be a happy ending, but at least it's not an everybody dies ending. Now, would I have any bad qualities with NOSFERATU? Well, I would say the bad qualities for the movie is that I think the movie does get a bit slow at times, and it's especially a problem for those who are not a fan of Eggers' other works. This movie doesn't really improve the slow bits of that do kind of are in a lot of his films. The pacing is fine for the most part, but it's kind of around the finale or middle of the film when the movie does get a little bit slow at some moments. I feel like this film really did not need to be over 130 minutes long. I feel like you could have cut 15 or 20 minutes of the movie could have been cut to keep the pace consistent. Especially because NOSFERATU is not really that long of a story. And one strange choice was one strange scene, I think the sex scene between Lily Rose Depp and whose character, Nicholas Hoult, was a little weird. yeah, the scene's meant to kind of show her mental state going really unstable, but it just felt out of place and just not really necessary. And it was just there to kind of pad out the runtime. And it just it was a little more confusing rather than kind of depth to her, than add really much depth to the character herself. And it really detracts from the mood of the film. And it does kind of nearly ruin the kind of carefully crafted tone. But does that ruin the movie though? No. No way, but it's just a weird thing to include. So, other than those, NOSFERATU, it's splendid, and it's definitely worth a watch. So in the end, NOSFERATU 2024 is an example of a remake that is worth watching and buying for horror fans and fans of NOSFERATU who want to see a done-right remake. Anyways, guys, that's it for my review of NOSFERATU. And if you're hungry NOSFERATU, here's how I'm going to rate this movie. So overall, if you love the other versions and love Robert Eggers, then totally watch and buy NOSFERATU for your collection, no doubt. And if you're wondering how I'm going to rate NOSFERATU, I'm going to give NOSFERATU an 8.5 out of 10. Alright, there you go, guys. That wraps up the review for NOSFERATU. There we go. Now I want to know in the comments down below what you guys thought about NOSFERATU. Whether you liked this movie, like I did, or whether you definitely one of the few that definitely hated it. And until then, guys, that will be it for this review. Thank you all for watching, and if you like this and want to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone.